There's this one idea that for so many people is like the ultimate destination for spiritual and emotional health. And it's this concept of unconditional love. So today, we're going to try and unpack what that actually means.
So let me ask you something. Do you believe in love at first sight? It's a great idea, right? Super romantic. But let's be honest. That feeling usually hits us when we see someone we think is beautiful or impressive or has something we value. It's pretty rare to feel that for someone we find, well, unappealing. And that right there tells you so much about the kind of love we're all used to.
The love we experience most of the time, regular human love, it almost always comes with conditions. At its very core, it's a reaction to the value we see in someone else. Just look at the difference here. The love we're used to is a response to value. But the kind of love we're talking about today, it runs on a completely different operating system. It doesn't look for value, it actually creates it. It's not something you can earn, it's just given. It's totally unconditional. And that brings us right to the heart of what we're digging into today. This idea of an unconditional promise. A love that isn't caused by anything you do, and one you could never, ever earn, no matter how hard you tried. To even describe this kind of love, the writers of the New Testament had to use a really specific Greek word, agape. And it means this selfless, sacrificial, totally unconditional kind of love. It's the word they chose to try and explain God's love for humanity. But here's the fascinating twist. The ancient Greeks had the word agape, but their own gods, Zeus, Hercules, all of them, they definitely didn't practice it. Their love was all about conditions, jealousy, and what they could get out of it. So this idea of a God who loves unconditionally, it was a totally radical, game-changing concept. The theologian St. Augustine put it perfectly. He said, God loves you as if you were the only person in the world, and he loves every other person the same way he loves you. Think about that. It's a love that is intensely personal, just for you, and at the same time completely universal for everyone. So let's be super clear about what this means. There is absolutely nothing you can do to make God love you more, and there is nothing you can do to make him love you less. Not your biggest achievements, not your worst failures, not the rules you follow, and not the mistakes you regret. His love for you is constant. Period. Okay, I know this can feel a little abstract, so to make it really concrete, let's dive into one of the most powerful stories ever told about this kind of love, the parable of the prodigal son. It's a story about a level of acceptance that is almost impossible to believe. So the story starts with a younger son who basically tells his dad, I want my inheritance now. He takes the money, heads off to a faraway land, and just blows it all on partying. Then a famine hits, and suddenly he's got nothing. He ends up so desperate he takes a job feeding pigs, which for him was the absolute lowest of the low. And when he hits rock bottom, he finally comes to his senses. But his motivation for going home wasn't some big moral awakening. It was purely practical. He thought, hey, even my father's hired hands eat better than this. His whole plan was just to go back and beg for a job as a servant. But this is the moment that changes everything. While the son is still way off in the distance, his father sees him. And instead of waiting for an apology or getting ready with a lecture, the father is just filled with compassion. He runs to his son, throws his arms around his neck, and kisses him. No I told you so. No questions asked. Just love. And look at what the father does next. He doesn't just forgive him, he completely restores him. He calls for the best robe. That restored his honor. He puts a ring on his finger. That restored his family authority. And he puts sandals on his feet. Now, that's key. In that culture, servants and slaves went barefoot. Only sons wore sandals. Every single gift sends the same message. You're not a servant. You are my son. Welcome home. So what's the big deal? What does actually accepting a love like this do for us? Well, it's not just a nice thought. It has the power to completely reframe how we see ourselves and how we live our lives. It literally changes our identity. It moves us from feeling like a slave, always living in fear, always trying to earn approval, to feeling like a child, living in the freedom that comes from knowing you are deeply loved, able to just cry out, Father. Okay, wait a minute. There's a question that probably pops into your head right about now. What about justice? I mean, we all have this built-in sense that when you do something wrong, there should be consequences. If God just lets everyone off the hook, is that really fair?
And the answer to that question is found in what might be the most famous verse in the entire Bible. The punishment wasn't just ignored, it was paid. Justice was served through the greatest act of sacrificial love imaginable, God giving his son Jesus to take that punishment for us. And that verse, John 3:16, well, it has a funny way of popping up in our culture, which brings me to this absolutely wild story about the quarterback Tim Tebow. Okay, get this. Exactly 3 years to the day after he famously wrote John 3:16 on his eye block for a championship game, he was playing in a huge playoff game. And in that game, he threw for exactly 316 yards. His average yards per completion, 31.6. His time of possession, 31 minutes and 6 seconds. And the TV ratings for the game peaked at, you guessed it, 31.6. Coincidence? Maybe. But what a crazy way for that message to show up. So where does that leave us? What's the takeaway? When we really truly let this unconditional love sink in, it sets off this incredible ripple effect. First, it gives us the ability to love God back. Then it gives us the freedom to actually love ourselves, not because of what we do, but because he loved us first. And from there, that love can't help but overflow into a real, genuine love for other people. I want to leave you with this one last thought. It comes from a woman whose life had been completely turned upside down. All her old routines were gone, and she felt totally lost. But then she had this realization. God hadn't left her. He was just inviting her to relate to him in a new way. She said, "Change is never an end. God is simply teaching you a new dance." And that makes you wonder, right? What if every single change in our lives, the good and the bad, is really just that, an invitation to learn a new step in the dance?